So this is a review for Porky's Building, released in 1937. It's the 166th in the series, and it's directed by Frank Tashlin. You can find an unrestored version of this short on the Porky Pig 101 DVD set. Since then, it has been restored in high definition. Hopefully one day we'll see it on some sort of physical media. In case you haven't seen this short, it's pretty straightforward, as they pretty much all are anyway. But you have Porky Pig and you have Dirty Diggs, and they are vying to build the new city town hall. They both give the same quote to actually build this building, so the city official decides, you know what, you're each going to build your own buildings, and whoever finishes first wins. Yeah, seems pretty wasteful. Then again, it involves City Hall, so I guess it's kind of appropriate, right? First up, you're going to see a re-edit of the original audio commentary I did, and after that you'll hear some new thoughts from me, and then you'll hear from my good friend Austin Kelly, the self-professed Tashlin-holic. So without further ado, let's get into it. This is such a bizarre premise for a cartoon. I mean, you just go with it. I mean, it's a cartoon, but it's just really weird. I somehow don't think that a city official would say, yep, you've got the exact same quote, so can you build two of the buildings that are going to be for the exact same purpose? It doesn't make any sense, but we'll go with it. Now, I love the design of that. I think it's either a gorilla or an ape or what, you know. Well, it is a great design nonetheless. So this one would be considered to be one of Frank Tashlin's lesser known efforts. This gag here looks like it's a Bing Crosby type situation, you know, get back, you're bothering me type thing, and it's quite a dark gag with a big punchline that's done really well. That certainly made me laugh. So he's you know, gonna get the audience to go with dynamite is, you know, sneak out and then pull the plunger. And I like the fact you don't see what happens to the people; it just cuts them away. It's like that's got to be one of the darkest gags I've seen. Animals seem to be similar designs to what Frank Tashlin would do in the more cute animal merry melodies he would eventually get to. And this machine here, I just love the logic behind it. It's just incredible, you know. And you got Porky, of course, doing the bricklaying there, and then now the other character's doing his little thing with the machine. And again, if you try and think about how this machine's supposed to work, it's just ridiculous. And I just love the logic here. Like, this kind of a big laugh at me. Just, how is this supposed to work? A reverse mode. That defies all logic. Defies everything. And here's a good gag here. Like, yeah, you think he's going to land in that hole, and nah, he misses. So those are my original thoughts, and there really wasn't too much. In fact, some of it had some incorrect information. So I guess turning these into reviews means I get to put some things under the rug, so to speak, of some mistakes that I had up on the original tracks. But in any case, my immediate thought when I saw this one again for this review is that it reminds me of this particular Popeye short where Olive Oil is trying to build a house, and then you've got Popeye and Bluto. They're sort of fighting over her. Well, what do you expect, right? And she proposes that they each build half of her house. And this is something very similar to that, and yet, as I pointed out, it's such a bizarre concept. All that money to build buildings, and what would happen to the one that's unfinished? What, they just tear it down, spend even more money? But anyway, whatever. I'm not going to be thinking too much into it. It's still pretty funny short, and some of you probably would have been booing and hissing in my opinions on Porky's Romance, but I actually think this one's a lot better. I really do. I'm sorry, I still stand by what I said about Porky's Romance. I'm not really that much of a fan of it, aside from the look of it, of course. But yeah, so we open up this short, and I love how it's a parody of the disclaimer that you would see about any similarities between persons living or dead is purely coincidental, and we even hear the woods are full of cuckoos in the background on that part, which I think is pretty funny. And we get a nice name here, which I didn't mention in the original track, but The building commissioner's name, Sandy Cement. Beautiful. Chef's kiss. Love that name. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And I do love the whole thing where we pause on something and we can look at some of the details. And I do like how it says, plans for new city hall, a politician's paradise with hot air outlets. Beautiful. But even then, the design of that building looks really nice, like the whole modern style that we was seeing a lot of in the previous short, Porky's Romance. And then another pause moment is those random bizarre calculations to get to those costings, and somehow they ended up getting the same amount in the end. I don't know. It's all about setting up the short, and that's exactly what it does, but it's just interesting to see. Now, my favourite gag here has to be that cornpipe smoking worker gag. And I'll mention that in the original track, but he's so annoyed at people crowding him trying to do his job that he outright murders them. He just blows them up. He's like, alright, these people aren't going to bother me anymore. I was visiting this short for this review. That's the gag that stood out to me the most. It is absolutely hilarious. And then straight after that, we see the precursor to the Flintstones in a way, where he got the animals being the machinery in this particular building site. And looking back at the commentary, I'm looking at it going, wow, yeah, the designs of those animals definitely do come across as the designs that Tashlin would use in his upcoming Merry Melody shorts. And speaking of murder, or in this case attempted murder, you've got Dirty Diggs, love that name, the bad guy. He just throws a brick at a guy just trying to do his job. It's like, alright. I mean, he's more or less just given up. He's got all these workers which we barely even see, and then he's, you know what? I don't need you anymore. And he just has this machine that's, as I pointed out in the track, was absolutely ridiculous. And he just shoots all these bricks, and it just, I don't know, I love the logic in that. It's just ridiculous. But why didn't he just use the machine in the first place? He could have finished the building a lot quicker, and it's, yep, I win. But anyway, whatever. But I do like that bunny gag, and we get a nice little rule of three. And in this case, we get the nice little capper at the end. So you see this bunny going, what about me, Porky? What about me, Porky? And then eventually, when all hope is lost, Porky decides, yep, alright, fine, whatever. I'm not going to think much of you, but whatever, go ahead. And turns out the bunny saves the day. And even has muscles in its ears. I absolutely love that. It's fantastic. So now you're going to hear from my good friend Austin Kelly. As I mentioned, he's a self-professed Tashlin-holic, and he's just going to discuss this short, so take it away, Austin.
Hello everybody, Austin Kelly again, back to talk about another classic Frank Tashlin film, Porky's Building from 1937. Now this one is a little weird because it's sort of underappreciated, and I think the reason is because it just wasn't put out on home video or the Golden Collections like a lot of those Frank Tashlin cartoons were, primarily for that disc on the 4th Golden Collection set. But there's no reason that should have been excluded, because Porky's Building is really an awesome card filled with awesome music and speed and a lot of good stuff. Tashlin was really on fire with the black and white cartoons, and there's something interesting that goes on, and we know, of course, that Tashlin did not like Porky, and that we see in the cartoons that he sort of tries to work around him. And I think Tashlin does that in an interesting way, because he doesn't try to work around Porky. He just kind of makes him this really bland character and puts his effort and interests in the side characters. You know, like the Billy Bletcher voiced villain in this cartoon. This cool Art Deco looking kind of design, and going out there with this great voice and this great energy. And we see that in, of course, the case of Stuttering Pig, with the villain lawyer Goodwill having this incredible sort of Jekyll and Hyde persona. Tashlin clearly has a higher level of interest in the side characters and sort of testing out what kind of plots he can do and different tricks and twists he can get in these cartoons, rather than focusing on the actual character of Porky. Now, that's not something Tashlin did as something that he only did, because if you look around, like the Tex Avery Porkies that he was doing at that time, they're kind of doing the same thing. Porky is never considered a central character It's sort of working around him to get interesting ideas and things going on. I think we see that in some of the early Clampett cartoons as well. I think the Warner cartoons later kind of made him like this angry, sort of average American. Like, that's sort of how I think of him in like the 50s McKimson cartoons. And that's probably where he's weakest, because he is just means to an end to have someone to have something happen to, so that you make a really interesting cartoon, spin it with these fun villains and plot ideas and things. But talk about fun plot ideas and villains, because Tashlin really is doing some fun experimenting here. And the Disney influence, right, is something that we talk about in cartoons without really knowing what that means. The Disney influence is prevalent in anything you see coming out of Hollywood studios in the 30s, whereas the Disney influence is sort of taken over by the Warner influence in the 40s. But the Disney influence is just noticeable here because there's just all these sweet-looking side animal characters, and Porky seems to just have a pack of animals at his will that are just, like, doing his bidding. We saw that in the North Woods cartoon, and certainly seeing it here. Like, Tashlin just does these throwaway gags with the animals, and that's in Cracked Ice. That's the Disney influence, seeing where that comes from. And, of course, Billy Bletcher is here to add to the Disney vibe, but there's really nothing Disney about this cartoon beyond that. Of all the Tashlin cartoons, I could kind of get my head around the idea of this being like a Mickey and Peg-Leg Pete adventure, and maybe having Donald and Goofy as part of the team instead of just those sort of random animals. So it is really sort of a Disney-esque thing, if you will. Which is interesting because I didn't realize that Tashlin was such a Disney fan. This is not something that you consciously think about. But if you read that interview with Michael Barrier, which I'm sure you've all read, it's required reading, Tashlin attributes his success and Warner's success as a cartoon industry to Disney entirely. He says Bugs Bunny was taken from The Tortoise and the Hare by Disney, and they all watched the Disney cartoons and loved them. I guess I understand why, is just because objectively for a while Disney was doing sort of the highest budget, highest quality stuff on the market. Not necessarily the most entertaining at times, but certainly high quality, high budget for quite a while there. Tashlin even said that Clock Cleaners was, I think, one of the best cartoons ever. Very big fan of that. And that came out the same year. And so it's sort of the same idea of just having a couple nonsense characters just put in a very interesting environment, like a construction site or this massive clock, and seeing what happens to them. I think there's more structure and plot to the Tashlin cartoon, but Clock Cleaners still an excellent cartoon. Not to say that it isn't because it lacks plot and structure, which is definitely still there. Maybe just more so in the Tashlin cartoon because he had a sense for that. Of course, keeping his mind on Hollywood and cinema, as we know he did when he was working in animation, to make excellent cartoons like Porky's Building. And I'm afraid that's all I have to say on this one, but we'll be back next time, as we always are, to mindlessly ramble on whatever Tashlin-related topics come to mind. So until then, I'll see you.
So thank you, Austin. And as I mentioned before, I honestly prefer this one over Porky's Romance. I really think that this one is way more entertaining than that previous short. But look, is this one perfect? No, it's not one of Tashlin's finest. I do find that his direction in this one is a little bit less ambitious than his previous shorts. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, it's just different. You know, maybe he had to get one out the door a lot quicker than usual. I don't know. But hey, it works pretty well here, and it's still cinematic, and we even get a moment where all hope appears to be lost with Porky, how he's crying, and then of course the bunny comes around and saves the day. And we get a lot of speed involved towards the end as well with this machine. So we still get the quote-unquote Tashlinisms in this one. It's just not as noticeable as his previous efforts. This one gets a 7 out of 10 for me. I quite enjoyed it, and you know, I reckon this is about a mid-tier Tashlin short. So that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.